Kyle Kizu writes, hey everyone, so yesterday, John, you said that Christopher Nolan is a better director than Joss Whedon, and that in maybe 5 years or so, he will be in the conversation with guys like Scorsese and Spielberg, but not on their level. I'm a Nolan nut. I love everything he's done. I'll admit, though, that The Dark Knight Returns has some solid plot holes, character inconsistency, etc. But other than that, I think that everything else is almost pure gold. Maybe there's too much plot in movies like The Dark Knight and Inception to the general audience, but I wouldn't ding him for that. I think it's more appreciative that he doesn't dumb down the content. So what I'm getting at is, why isn't he on the Spielberg or Scorsese level?
Yeah, yesterday on AMC Mailbag, the question came in, hey, you know, Joss Whedon created the greatest Marvel film with Avengers. Christopher Nolan created the greatest DC film with the Dark Knight trilogy. Which one's better? And I said, look, I'm a huge Whedonite. I worship at the altar of Joss Whedon. Joss Whedon is my master now. But there's no Christopher Nolan. When you look at his pantheon of films that he has directed, there's really no comparison yet at this point. Christopher Nolan is the better film director. But I did say also too, now he's not on the same level as Steven Spielberg. There's no shame in saying that you're not on the level of Steven Spielberg, because that is the level, is Steven Spielberg. And then I had some people saying, hey, no, I think Christopher Nolan, surely people who are under 20 years old, writing me say, no, Christopher Nolan is the greatest director of all time, and blah. Right. Okay, look. I am a huge fan. I was a big fan of Christopher Nolan before being a fan of Christopher Nolan was cool. I'm kind of a hipster Christopher Nolan fan in that way. I absolutely just love this guy. I think he's an incredible director, and I'll watch anything this guy makes. But at this point, let's talk again in 20 years, but at this point, he is not in the same league as a Steven Spielberg. I mean, come and talk to me in 20 years when Christopher Nolan has consistently been making all-time greatest films for 30 years. Come back to me and talk to me when Christopher Nolan has a couple of Oscars on his mantle. Come back to talk to me then. Look, I love films. I talked about Insomnia the other day. I think that is Christopher Nolan's most underrated film. I love that movie. But you mentioned films like Insomnia to a lot of people, or Memento to a lot of people, or even The Prestige to a lot of people, and they'll go, oh, wait a minute, what movie's that again? You say Jaws, boom, everybody knows what you're talking about. You say Close Encounters of the Third Kind, one of the all-time greatest sci-fi films ever, boom, everybody knows what you're talking about. You say Jurassic Park, boom, everybody knows what you're talking about. Say Schindler's List, boom. You say E.T., boom. You say Raiders of the Lost Ark, boom. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on. This guy has made more films in what could be considered the greatest films of all time list than any other filmmaker. I mean, the only other guy that I think comes close to a guy like Spielberg, the guys who belong in the same conversation with Spielberg would be guys like Kubrick, would be guys like Hitchcock, would be guys like Scorsese. But, I mean, that's the creme de la creme de la creme. Right now, Steven Spielberg has 7 Best Directing nominations, with 2 wins and a Lifetime Achievement Award. Christopher Nolan, no nominations, no wins, although he really did deserve a nomination for Inception. I still don't understand that one. But look, when you go down the pantheon, like we already said, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Amistad, my favorite Steven Spielberg film. Color Purple. Color Purple is another one. AI, Catch Me If You Can, Minority Report, Munich. I mean,
Munich's amazing. That's super underrated.
Saving Private Ryan. I mean, it goes on and on and on.
It's like there's 10 directors wrapped into Spielberg.
Yeah, it's crazy. He's done comedy, sci-fi, drama, action. He can do it all. You know, my one criticism of Christopher Nolan right now would be, and it's a very minor criticism, it's actually really a nitpick, is that so far all of his films all have kind of the same tone. I'd love to see Christopher Nolan take a shot at a flat-out comedy. I'd love to see what he does with something like that, see him get outside of his comfort zone a little bit. But listen, to say that I don't believe Christopher Nolan is in the same conversation yet with like a Steven Spielberg, that is no insult whatsoever. It's like going up to a new upcoming nice, great little hockey player and saying, hey, yeah, you're really good, but you're no Wayne Gretzky yet. You're talking about the greatest hockey player of all time. It's not an insult to say you're not him yet. So, no, they're not, Christopher Nolan, Steven Spielberg are not in the same conversation yet. But give Nolan another 15 years. He's amazing. If there's any director working right now, young director right now, who I think has the possibility of getting into that conversation in 10, 15 years, it would be Christopher Nolan. Anyway, Schnepp, how do you see it?
I see Nolan like a Wes Anderson. I mean, he's like an auteur type who has a very specific style that he brings to every single one of his movies.
Yeah.
It has a tone. Like if you look at Memento and you look at The Dark Knight, they have a very similar tone. Yeah. Insomnia and The Dark Knight have a similar tone. Totally different subject matter, but there's a tone that's similar. Not saying that Spielberg, he doesn't really have a specific tone. He's just an incredible director.
Yeah.
He can take any type of story and tell it successfully and add some kind of magic to it that is gripping and amazing. So same thing, I mean, Scorsese definitely has his own kind of a style. You could see a Spielberg movie and you could see a Scorsese movie and know what you're watching pretty much.
Right.
At some point while you're watching, you'd be like, I feel Spielbergian, you know what I mean? I think Nolan has that too, but he just hasn't produced enough.
Yeah.
Like actually, not just directed, but also Spielberg has produced hundreds of movies.
Literally
hundreds of movies he's produced. Nolan, I think he's produced Man of Steel.
Right.
Like one or two other.
And Nolan's young.
I know, that's what I'm
Let's give
saying.
him lots of time.
That's why I agree with you.
Yeah.
Like 15, 20 years, his name will probably be in that plate of producer directors. But yeah, I mean, he's super talented, but he's not. It's apples and oranges. So.
Yeah.
If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to AMC Movie News on YouTube. It's free and a great way to stay updated with all the latest movie news and check out our daily show, AMC Movie Talk. Also, don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter to stay in the loop for our special prizes, giveaways, and contests.